Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm transmitting live from sunny Spain, as opposed to my spiritual home, which is Cornwall in the southwest of the United Kingdom. I'm the head of economics and business at Highgrove Online International School. Do I teach international A-level business? Yes, I do. Am I the chief examiner for international A-level business? No, I'm not. But I am a principal examiner for the UK domestic A-level in business, and there are significant similarities between the UK version and the international version. The only difference really is the assessment model. The specification is fundamentally identical. The material learned in the UK domestic version is identical to what is learned in the international A-level version. The only difference, UK domestic version, linear, 3 exams at the end of a 2-year course. Whereas, as we all know, for the international A-level version, we have got examination sittings in October, examination sittings in January, examination sittings in May/June, with resit opportunities. And that fundamentally creates slightly different command words. Now, we've already done our initial training, which was last week, okay? Last Tuesday, module 1. And module 1 went through the kind of command words, the weightings of assessment objectives, the 10% quantitative skills requirement, the importance of looking at the Getting Started guide in conjunction with the specification, the importance of looking at different exam papers and realizing that there's a commonality of structure between Unit 1 and Unit 2. And then as you move to the A2, the second year in the international A level, a commonality of structure between Units 3 and Units 4. We also, if you can remember, we also said that Units 3 and Units 4 are much harder. They're much harder because they have a greater percentage weighting of analysis and evaluation compared to the IAS Units 1 and 2, where there is a much greater proportion of marks coming from knowledge/understanding and application. And because each of the units have got an equal weighting of 25%, it makes more sense to focus on Units 1 and Units 2 as a place to accumulate the all-important UMS marks. What's the overall target in terms of UMS marks? To get to an A, it's 320 out of 400. Each unit generates 100 UMS. You're looking for 80% of the available UMS, 320 out of 400. Doesn't matter where you get the 320 out of 400 from. My viewpoint, as I said last week, focus on Units 1 and Units 2. That's the place to get the UMS. It's a lot harder to pick them up in Units 3 and 4, just because of the nature of the command words. The A star is something that students are continually obsessing over and craving. Well, the A star cannot be achieved by anything that you do in the first year of the 2-year A level. Units 1 and Units 2 do not contribute to the A star at all. The A star comes from achieving 90% of the available UMS across Units 3 and 4, the 2 upper 6 units, which are significantly harder in terms of weightings of assessment objectives, and therefore significantly harder in terms of the difficulty of the command words a student is likely to encounter. You need 190 out of 200 across Units 3 and 4. So you need to get an A, reach 320 out of 400 overall, and within that 320 out of 400 overall, 190 out of 200 has got to come from Units 3 and 4, the 2 units that are encountered at some point during the second year of a 2-year course. Well, that is me talking a lot, okay? And I just would be interested to see who else we have in the room. You know quite a bit more about me, and I've tried to do a recap for those of you who were not here last Tuesday. Let's see who we've got. Okay, now I'm going to converse with you via the chat. Okay, via the chat. Samantha Litchfield is saying, welcome to Spain. Hello from Vietnam. Hello from Ibrahim from the Maldives. Many happy memories of Malé and Ali in the Maldives. Myanmar. Oh, Michelle's also in Spain, Marbella. We've got Andrew in Dubai, Edward also in the UAE. We've got somebody in there from Bahrain. That's Laura. Laura, no need to have your camera on. I did spot that earlier on. Looked nicer there than it did here. Mind you, it's very early in the morning here still. Oh, we've got somebody here from the Cameroon, which is great, and Kenya. More from Spain. I can see Malaga and Thailand, and the UAE's coming back in there. Montenegro. I seem to remember that from last Tuesday, so that's fantastic. We're back in Spain again with Madrid, and we're going back to the Middle East with Jordan, Sri Lanka. Always like Sri Lanka. Also got India as well, and back into Dubai. Okay, now what are we going to be looking at today? Now, I hate these pre-generated agendas, okay? These pre-generated agendas are something that just has to be in the presentation, okay? But essentially, what we are going to be looking at today are the more advanced points-based questions. So remember what the points-based questions are. We looked at some of them last week. We looked at define last week. We looked at calculate last week. We looked at explain last week, okay? Today, we're going to look at analyze, okay? 6-mark question that appears in Units 1 and Units 2 only. And you will see the analyze question in Section A and Section B of the Unit 1 and Unit 2 exams. So we're going to have a look at the analyze question. Then we're going to change tack. We're going to move into what's called levels-based marking. And that's where it becomes more ambiguous, less precise, because you are testing multiple assessment objectives. All 4 of the assessment objectives will be under test. And rather than trying to identify examples of specific skills demonstrated within the answer, you're now taking a holistic judgment, and you're trying to find the level descriptor that best matches what you have just read. And we're going to be looking at the discuss, we're going to be looking at the assess, and then we're going to be looking at the one that students hate to write and you loathe to mark, the 20-mark evaluate question, okay? And of course, as we move into Units 3 and 4, those assess questions and those evaluate questions generate the vast majority of the marks. So there's the agenda, but I've just kind of paraphrased it and said, well, look, this is what we're going to try and do. We're going to try and get an insight into how these are marked, okay? Now, it's worth having the backdrop of the fact that as you move towards the harder questions, as the mark tariff slowly starts to increase, those questions are designed to find the best students. So if you have a student of more moderate means who is expecting to get a starred A grade, I'm afraid to say it's going to be quite an unrealistic proposition, okay? My advice there would be try and get to an A by picking up all of the marks on the much more straightforward points-based questions, the define, the calculate, the explain, the construct, those kind of questions. And also the analyze question. And it's the analyze question that we're going to be looking at first, okay? So still points-based, analyze question. I actually think the analyze question is an easier question than the 4-mark explain question. The 4-mark explain question, it's marked 1A01, 2A02, 1A03. So you've got to have 2 distinct strands of development that make use of the extract. And in my experience, students either don't use the extract, which limits their mark to 2, or they only put in one distinct strand of development using the extract, which limits their mark to 3. Now, the reason why I quite like the analyze question is because the analyze question is always divided up into 2. Analyze 2 ways, analyze 2 benefits, analyze 2 drawbacks. And because it's marked 2AO1, 2AO2, 2AO3, logically, for each of the ways, advantages, benefits, drawbacks, methods, it's got to be 1AO1, 1AO2, 1AO3, separate paragraph moving on to the second way, advantage, method, drawback, whatever it might be, 1AO1, 1AO2, 1AO3. So it's almost like 2 easier explain questions. That's how I view the analyze question. And I'm saying to my students, in units 1 and units 2, where section A and section B are identical in structure, and you've got this sort of define, and then you've got that interchangeable explain, construct, calculate scenario, and then you've got the analyze question. 6 marks for the analyze question, which is 1C or 2C. 4 marks for the explain, calculate, or construct, which of course is interchangeable. That's 6 plus 4, that's 10. 2 marks for the define question, 12. Now that is going to be replicated in section A and section B. 12 times 2, 24. 24 out of a total question paper value of 80. Well, you can do the maths. It's more than 25%. And I'd be looking to try and get that 25% without loss. Okay, so let's have a look at some analyze questions. Now, this is where it's going to become seriously important. Seriously important that we've got hold of that delegate booklet, okay? So you might want to scroll back in the chat, okay? Because we've got a lot of delegates in here online. I'm scrolling back right to the first part of the chat where Antoinette has given us the explanation as to how to find the delegate booklet, okay? So you need to get hold of that delegate booklet. And whilst that is happening, I am going to, Antoinette has very, very kindly put the explanation at the end of the chat now. So I'm just going to stop for 2 or 3 minutes just to give people the ability to do that. I don't know. If you've got a printer to hand, you might want to print it off. I mean, I'm old school. I like to deal with hard copy, and I like to annotate things, and I like to write it on. But there's nothing to prevent you from not writing it on, because of course you're going to get the recording. You're going to get a copy of the PowerPoint slides. You can get a copy of the delegate booklet, so you could look back and do it separately. But I'm just going to give people 2 or 3 minutes from 9:15 to 9:18 just to make sure that they've got this. That's not for me to send. That is a Pearson thing to send. Okay, so you need to contact your Pearson representative to find out why you've not received said recording. Okay. And whilst that is going on, I'm going to answer Rebecca's earlier question. Does this differ from the IGCSE marking where you cannot give marks if the knowledge is not applied to the context? Correct. Okay. You're not just sort of copying out the extract. That when I say you're demonstrating application, the application has got to reflect what the question is actually asking. Okay, it's not just like the fact that you've just lifted something from an extract and copied it out, and that means you're going to get the application marks. So as we will see in a moment, just mentioning the words cappuccino and latte and then nothing else, that's not going to get you the 2 application marks, because just writing cappuccino and latte does not answer the question. All you've done is just give us two types of coffee. Okay, so and that is different to the way that international A-level economics is marked. Okay, so there is a distinct difference between business and economics. Okay, if you teach economics, you will know what I mean. You don't get marks from copying the extract. You've got to use the extract to develop a strand that helps answer the question. Okay. Sometimes it's also worth flagging up the fact that you've used the extract by putting in brackets, I don't know, extract A. And that way the examiner knows that you've used the extract. The examiner now only has to consider whether or not the use of that extract is in the confines of a strand of development which answers the question. Okay, so hopefully I've answered that question from Rebecca. Okay, so we're on 918, and I'm hoping that everybody has got the delegate booklet available to them, and there's some kind of photocopier or printer whirring away in the background, printing this stuff out en masse. Okay, it's up to you though. You can do it either way. If you're not somebody who likes paper, then you don't have to use paper. You can always listen back to the recording. Okay, let's have a look at a mark scheme. Now, we've just gone a bit too far forward there. There's the mark scheme. Now, the funny thing about the analyze question is the knowledge element, okay? The two A01 marks. Because you can get the two A01 marks for providing a definition. Or you can get the two A01 marks for giving the two reasons, the two ways, the two advantages, the two drawbacks, whatever the analyze to and the following word after the two actually is. Now, I would recommend never giving the definition, because by giving the definition, you're then going to repeat the knowledge element by giving the two reasons. So if you give a definition and then you give the two reasons can't score any A01 marks because the two A01 marks have already been awarded through the definition. So therefore, the definition is a total waste of everybody's time. The only scenario where I would give a definition is if I have no clue as to how to answer the question. And that really makes very limited logical sense, because if you know the definition, you're going to have some clue as to how to answer the question. Okay, what have we got here? We've got Lynn has asked a question. Dear Jonathan, my student struggles with writing sentences that make grammatical sense, I'm guessing. Although if I test knowledge of the concepts in the subject, he can answer well. So I advise him to write keywords, concepts, instead of trying to explain it all in his own words. Okay, so you're going to pick up some marks there, aren't you? By sort of defining things. But the nature of the beast when it comes to these harder questions is you're trying to develop these logical link strands and also insert application taken from the extract in there. And as we move into discuss, assess, and evaluate, also bring in AO4 and evaluation. So these harder questions are testing trickier skills. And if you've got a student who is struggling to put sentence together, then it's only natural that they're going to struggle to be able to demonstrate those skills. And there's no way around that other than to practice. Okay, Shipra has said, do I need to explain two knowledge points or just mention them? The two knowledge points might be worth just looking at a question, and then you'll sort of get a better idea for it in a second. Okay. Okay, so let's have a look. This is where we're going to use the delegate booklet, and that's why the 3-minute pause to get hold of the delegate booklet is actually worth our while. Okay. Now, in the delegate booklet, please ignore the page numbering, because the page numbering was taken from when this was one massive delegate booklet. What you should be looking at is pages 3, okay, to pages 7. On pages 3 to 7, you have got the extract on page 3. On page 4, you've got the mark scheme. On page 5, you've got exemplar 1. On page 6, you've got exemplar 2. And page 7, you've got exemplar 3. So there are 3 analyze questions to mark. Now, what I want you to do, okay, is I want you to mark them. And there's a box at the bottom of each of the pages in the delegate booklet to put in a total mark. Now, here's the really important bit, okay? I want you to use the question and answer pod. The question and answer pod is in that menu that you have. It's different to the chat. The question and answer pod, or the Q&A pod, or whatever you want to call it, means that nobody else can see what you have typed and given me. And what I want you to do is I want you to mark them, and then I want you to tell me which is best. Exemplar 1, exemplar 2, exemplar 3. Okay, so that's your task. And I would say 15 minutes for this task is probably appropriate, 5 minutes per exemplar, and also a bit of time there to read the extract. Okay, more practice, yeah. And that's what we're doing right now, isn't it? We're practicing marking the analyzed questions to gain an insight into how the analyzed question is marked, so therefore we can better prepare our students to score highly on the analyzed question. To go back to Shipra's question, will one definition give both marks of AO1? Yes, it will, if the definition is accurate. Okay, but I would again question why give the definition if you're going to give the 2 reasons, because the 2 reasons are going to get you your 2 analyzed, you're going to get you your 2 AO1 or knowledge marks. I personally would not be giving a definition. I just can't see a scenario where somebody gives a definition and then can't give 2 reasons or 2 benefits or 2 advantages or 2 disadvantages. Because if they know the definition, surely they must be able to work it out. And I would also argue that giving 2 advantages is quicker than writing out a definition. Okay, so 15 minutes. That takes us very tidily and neatly up to 9:40 British summertime. Best exemplar, I'm not going to tell you what this person's written. Do we put our individual scores in for each one as well? No, you don't have to. Okay, you can keep those individual scores to yourself. I'm just looking for the one which you think is the best. Okay, and then we'll consider the reasons why. Okay. People starting to put their things in here. People are saying to me, oh, I like this exemplar, that exemplar. Interesting. Got about 8 in, and there's over 100 delegates in the room, but then we've still got 10 minutes left. General chat rather than the Q&A. Never think that the mark scheme is the only set of answers that are accepted. The material in the mark scheme is indicative content. It's what students could write, but it's not exhaustive. There are many other answers to this question that are perfectly valid. And that's where teacher and examiner skill comes in. So if you've got an answer that does not match the mark scheme, you ask yourself the question, is this right or is this wrong? Because you can't ever write a mark scheme in business that incorporates every single correct approach to answering the question. There are a multitude of correct approaches. When the mark schemes are put together, they will just pick an approach or some ideas. This is what we think students may write. But there are also other things a student may write, which are also equally valid. So don't be marking this stuff thinking, oh, it's not on the mark scheme, it's wrong, because it's not on the mark scheme. They're thinking, well, is this logical? Is this correct? Yeah. If I think it is, then I think it's valid and it's got to be scoring some of the marks. Okay, 5 more minutes on this exercise. Mabungang. No need to have your camera on. Okay, no need to have that. You might get a slightly better experience in terms of speed of bandwidth with camera off. Okay, everybody. Right, okay. We spent 15 minutes looking at 3 different exemplars to the 6-mark analyze question. I'm now going to go through this in turn, right? So I'm going to spend a bit of time showing you how these are marked. I'm going to use colour because I think colour demonstrates best the different assessment objectives that are under test. And it also helps to cement to the students how this is marked and ensures that they actually do put evidence of each of the assessment objectives into their answers in the correct proportions that the question is designed to test. Now, as we know, this is 2A01, 2A02, 2A03, and it's analysed 2 possible reasons. Therefore, A01, A02, A03 for the first reason, A01, A02, A03 for the second reason. Easier question than the explain question, in my opinion. I think the explain question's the harder question. So I'm going to go with orange for A01, okay? And I'm sort of looking at this. I'm sort of quality management techniques used by business to ensure that the quality of their products are up to standard. They need to keep a good brand image and increase customer loyalty. They're getting into some reasons there, aren't they? Quality management has different techniques such as total quality management, quality control, and quality assurance. I would turn around and say, well, look, irrespective of anything else, I think we have got 2 pieces of understanding there, or knowledge. They have a clear understanding of what quality management is. So I've got no qualms with that. Okay. And then I'm switching color now. I'm going to move my pen up to a slightly thicker color. Starbucks is the second biggest coffee house chain in the UK, and it also states in the extract, consumers expect great quality taste and service. Right, okay, so there's some AO2. This shows that quality is a big aspect of Starbucks, so to make sure consumers keep coming back and sales remain constant. So we're now starting to get some analysis there. So I'm switching to red, keep coming back and the sales remain constant. They have to make sure the quality is good and up to what consumers expect. Okay, so we've got some AO3 there. Okay, sliding down. Good quality means that consumers wouldn't mind paying a higher price. Okay, so again, we've got repetition there because we've already given a definition and now we're giving a reason. Okay, but the reason can't count for AO1 because we've already given a definition. So we've got a bit of waste here, a bit of lost time. Okay, so I'm now searching for the second application mark, and it's not coming from the word coffee because the word, well, it could come from, let's just look at the question. I'm perhaps thinking of the next question. Yeah, it will come from the word coffee because coffee is not in the question. And I've got this 250. So I've definitely got AO2 there. They have to maintain quality if they want to charge a reasonable price and they won't want to increase the price. Okay, so we've got a little bit, maybe a little bit of AO3 in there as well. So they've got to keep the quality good to be able to charge that kind of price, and they want to increase the price. So maybe some AO3. So I'd be looking at that and I'd be turning around and saying it's 6 marks. But I'll also be turning around and saying, well, look, I could streamline that. I can strip that down to the bare bone. Now, never, ever confuse length with quality on any question, especially points-based marked questions. Points-based marked questions, as soon as you see the skill, you award the marks. Doesn't matter, says Shipra. You're looking for one strand of analysis. That's what it is. This is not levels-based marking, where the levels-based descriptors will make some reference to the quality of the linked chains. All you're looking for is a linked chain. All you're looking for is a strand. You're not looking for multiple chains. So the 6-mark analyze question is your last chance to get in some very, very straightforward and easy marks. 2-mark definition question, 1A, 2A. 4-mark explain question, interchangeable with 4-mark construct question, interchangeable with 4-mark calculate question, 1B. 2B. 1C, 2C, 6-mark analyze question. Of course, this only applies to units 1 and 2. This is to give those weaker students the opportunity to get those marks. And if you do have those weaker students, I would be focusing all over this. Okay, I think you can get weaker students to a decent number of marks. Now let's have a look at this one as a contrast. I'm going to go back to my orange. It makes the taste of each cup of coffee identical. That's a piece of knowledge. It could also count as a piece of application if I wanted to, because it's got cup of coffee. Quality management, does it make the taste of each cup of coffee identical? Yes, it does. So I'm going to count that as AO1, but if I needed to, I could count that as AO2. Change color. Purple, which is what I use for AO2. This is because the barista, little bit of additional knowledge here coming in. Clearly they've been to a coffee shop, will produce each cup in the same way using the correct blend of beans. Now that is definitely AO2 because I've got coffee beans or beans and I've got barista. Then what have I got here? Therefore, customers are likely to become loyal to Starbucks. And that is the example there, Shipra, of that is all you need to do, okay? That is all you need to do to get 3 marks for the first reason. And you compare that to the previous one. Look at this. It's huge. It's absolutely massive. And look at how much in there is possibly not really underlined. Or if it is underlined, as to how that can be streamlined or pared back to say the same thing in less words. Let's move on to the second bit. Again, we're back into orange. It ensures the quality of each drink is always at a high standard. Yeah, that's what quality management does. That's a reason for having quality management. AO1, switch colors. Therefore, allowing Starbucks to charge a premium for each drink. Drink, that is application. Starbucks is not application because Starbucks exists within the question. Then we move to analysis. As a result, making sure quality reaches a certain standard could allow value to be added. Well, that's a logical step, isn't it? If you can charge a premium, you could add value. Okay, so that's got to count for the AO3. So I'd look at that one and think, well, okay, that's got to be 6. And I tell you what, that second exemplar is a heck of a lot easier to mark than that first exemplar. That first exemplar, as an examiner, I've got to really concentrate on that. I might have to read it more than once. And if I've got to read it more than once, you're relying on the examiner reading it more than once. So therefore, that creates inherent risk. Whereas the approach taken by the second person is A, much more streamlined. Notice we've got a paragraph break between the 2 reasons, much, much easier to mark. And notice how the way it is created, it matches the mark scheme. AO1, AO2, AO3, AO1, AO2, AO3. A lot easier, okay? And most importantly of all, using significantly less words. So when you're allocating that analysis mark, don't think, oh, there's not enough analysis for me to give 1 mark. It's 1 mark and it's points-based marking. So just by saying on the end of that second paragraph, this could allow value to be added. That's analysis. You can't turn around and say that's not worth anything. That's nothing. That's a nothingness. That is a strand of analysis. What have we got here? Edward is saying, well, look, what we got here. What have we got here? Each cup of coffee identical, right? Fine. I think that's a point. This is because the barista will produce each cup in the same way, yeah, using the correct blend of beans. They have developed the idea of homogenization, yeah? And the skill that I am awarding there is the skill of application. Barista, correct blend of beans. It's not double counting. It is giving you something different than, it's not saying each cup of coffee is identical, therefore they are the same. I would take that as double count, okay, take that as a repeat, but I think that second one gives something different, okay? And then we move on to our third exemplar, okay? And our third exemplar is very similar to our second exemplar in the sense that it's quite well constructed, with the exception of that. That is a waste of time, total waste of time, yeah? Because you're getting the AO1 from there, okay? And then you move to the third paragraph, and as you move to the third paragraph, market's more competitive, yeah? We've got a reason there. So what we've got there is the student giving us 4 AO1 marks. And there's no point in giving 4 AO1 marks because there's only 2 AO1 marks to give. So that definition, I'm just going to go through it again, just for the sake of just sort of like being really, really clear. Total waste of time if you're going to do that. Now, I could also be ruthless here. One reason why it is important, get rid of that, start there. It can ensure the quality of each cup of coffee is identical. I'm stripping out words. I'm doing an axe or hatchet job. I'm stripping out more words. And if you wanted to, you could download these and you could use these in the classroom to do this. Okay? This is points-based marking. As soon as the student or candidate has given you evidence of the skill, you have to award the mark. Okay? Now, we're about to move on to something which is significantly more difficult, but I'm just going to have a look here. Okay, so I've answered Edward's question. What's Lynn got? So it doesn't matter how much of the theory or definition are mentioned in the answer. No, not at all. The question is asking for to analyze a reason. And the analysis of the reason is giving the reason. Analyze is actually probably not the best word to use to describe what you're doing in this question, because not enough marks are allocated to it. Because by giving the reason, you're showing the knowledge. And then you've only got 2 linked strands to demonstrate your understanding of that particular reason. One of which has to include application to score the AO2 mark. And then the next one can include application, but doesn't have to score the AO3 mark. Each of your reasons should be no longer than 3 sentences. You could do a 6-mark answer to that question in 6 sentences with a paragraph break between the first 3 sentences and the second 3 sentences. And that's how easy that question is. I would look at that question, as I said, and say, well, look, I actually think that is easier than the 4-mark explain question. I'd rather do a 6-mark analyze question than a 4-mark explain question every single day. So just for the sake of clarity, okay, and I'm just going to have to move that out of the way. Just for the sake of clarity, every single one of those responses scored 6 marks. But I tell you what, yeah, the best one in terms of efficiency and readability was the second one, in my opinion. Really, really easy to see the marks. Reason. Development using application. Development that could use application but doesn't have to. AO1, AO2, AO3. Paragraph break. Second reason, AO1. Development using application. AO2. Further development could use application, doesn't have to use application, AO3. Move on, 6 sentences, 6 marks. This does not have to be something where people are going on to extra paper. It's supposed to be a relatively straightforward question that is designed to allow students of a more moderate ability to score marks. And I'd be looking at some of these efficiency rates here. You know, I'd rather write 77 words than 170 words. Because then, you know, the person who writes 77 words has probably finished the 20-mark question at the end of section C. Whereas the person who's written 170 words on a 6-mark analyze question probably has got nowhere near finishing the 20-mark question on section C. And for those levels-based questions, significantly more time has to be spent in the construction. Yeah? I would always have a time tariff, Shipra. Okay? Always have a time tariff for me. My time tariff, what we've got here, we've got 2 hours, okay, 120 minutes, 120 minutes to do 80 marks worth of questions. So you can calculate the time tariff of how long you should spend per mark of question. Now, what I always say to my students is, well, look, the define questions, you can operate faster than tariff. The explain questions, you can operate faster than tariff. The calculate questions, you can operate faster than tariff. The construct questions, you can. The analyze questions, you can. And you're building up a war chest of time, a reserve bank of time, which you can then use for the trickier discuss questions, okay? The trickier assess questions, and obviously the trickier evaluate question. And hopefully you can see my logic here in this. It's very, very difficult to build up that war chest or reserve bank of time in units 3 and 4, because in units 3 and 4, you get busy with the levels-based questions very quickly. And that's why units 3 and 4 are much, much harder. For me, the secret to success is units 1 and 2, with these easy speed questions where you can then finish the paper and hopefully get to 180 out of 200 UMS, 20 UMS above the A grade threshold. You're subsidizing units 3 and 4 by whatever sum of UMS points you manage to score above 160. Okay. Read the questions, Ibrahim. Read the questions first and then go to the case study, okay? And then look at what you can find from the case study that's going to help you answer the question. So I would look at the questions first and then go to the extract. I wouldn't read the extracts first and then go to the question, because that is an inefficient way of doing it. You don't know what you're going to need from that extract before you answer the question. So you look at the question and then think, right, I need to find something that's going to support my ideas. Right, back to the extract. What can I use? That's the way I would do it. Right, moving on. Okay, we're now into levels-based mark schemes. Okay, levels-based mark schemes. Things are going to become much more subjective. Things are going to become much more normative. They're going to become more ambiguous because you are making professional judgments about a student's answer. Whereas with the analyzed questions and all of the other styles of questions that we met last week, these were precision marked. I can see application. Is it valid? Yes, a mark. I can see knowledge. Is it valid? Yes, it's a mark. Levels-based questions are much more opaque, okay? And because they're much more opaque, I don't like relying on them, okay? But you really have to do a disastrous job not to score something. That is the benefit of the levels-based mark questions, because you're using the level descriptors to inform the mark that you finally award and the level that you finally award. Okay, now let's explain how these levels-based mark schemes work. When you get to a levels-based question, discuss, assess, or evaluate, essentially what you are doing is you are testing all of the 4 assessment objectives: knowledge, application, analysis, and evaluation, okay? Now, you have to accept that in these kind of questions, students will make some errors, okay? You're never going to get the perfect answer, okay? That's one of the things you have to accept here. And that is why you have to use this levels-based mark scheme. You're matching what you've read against the level descriptors. Now, the way it works is this. You read the answer. Does it match level 1? No, it's better than that. Does it match level 2? Yes. Okay, just to check, I'm going to read the level descriptor for level 3. Does the answer I've just read match the descriptor in level 3? No. Which of the level descriptors, 2 or 3, best matches what you've just read? I think 2. So straight away, you go to the midpoint of the number of marks within that level. And if there isn't a midpoint, because the midpoint ends up in 0.5 or 2.5 or something, you round up, okay? So if, let's say for argument's sake, level 2 was 3 to 4 marks. You can't award 3.5, so you round up and you award 4. That's the way it works. You then turn around and say, well, look, I've just read that question, and I thought level 2 was the most appropriate level, but there were elements of level 3 in it. But I still think level 2 is the most appropriate level. In that situation, yeah, you might turn around, yeah, and say, well, actually, okay, maybe I want to consider a situation where, is it top of level 2 or is it bottom of level 3? And that's how subjective this can become. It can become hugely subjective because of those factors. And because it's subjective, there is an adjacency. What's an adjacency? Plus or minus 1 mark on the discuss question. Plus or minus 2 marks, yeah, on the 10-mark assess question. Plus or minus 3 marks on the evaluate question. Right. Okay. I've explained that. So let's get on and now have a look at some of these levels-based questions. Discuss question. Now, again, I actually think the discuss question is relatively straightforward. Where will I see the discuss question? I'll only see it in units 1 and units 2. It will appear as question 1D or question 2D. 8 marks. Now, the aim of the discuss question, yeah, is to really just get people used to being evaluative, okay? Just get people used to being evaluative. So you're just looking for some evidence of evaluation. You're not looking for a conclusion. You're not looking for anything terribly sophisticated. So long as you start to see some evaluation in there and the other assessment criteria within the level are met, you might end up going quite high on this question. It's really the assess question and the evaluate question where things start to get really quite difficult for students. So if you've got students of a more moderate ability, the discuss questions, the last real question where they're going to be able to pick up some decent marks. Best thing to do here is have a look at the mark scheme. Look at how the mark scheme has been created. To get to level 1, it's very, very easy because all you need to do really is write something that is relevant to the question, because that was what isolated elements of knowledge and understanding would be. Somebody mentioned earlier on, I think it was Lynn, about putting a definition in. That definition would be an example of isolated elements of knowledge and understanding. There's no application in there, so there's no use of any extracts. Generic assertions, so just statements are made without any kind of development. That's what level 1 would look like. Now, most answers for the discuss question will end up in level 2 because that's where they will end up. There'll be some understanding. There'll be some use of the context. There'll be some basic chains of reasoning. And there might be a small attempt at some kind of evaluation. Not so many will get into level 3, but a fair proportion will. Because all you need to do there is you need to ensure that whatever points you pick are developed using the extract and provide some form of balance. Some form of balance. Right. What we're going to do is we're going to crack on and we're going to have a go at marking some discuss questions. Okay, so again, ignore the page numbering on that slide because that page numbering on that slide was taken from a situation before we hacked up the pack and did the define and the calculate and the explain questions in module 1. So we are now looking at page 8. What is Zwift? Page 8 to page 9. Yeah? To page 10. You've got the extract, you've got the mark scheme. Then you've got 2 exemplars. So we're going all the way up as far as page 12 in your delegate booklet. We have got 2 answers to mark. for the discuss question. Okay, 2 answers to mark for the discuss question. So let's have a go at that. And if you can put into the question and answer pod the marks that you have given for each of the 2 exemplars. Samia, go to more, okay? And when you go to more, the 3 little dots, you should be able to see resources pack. And then if you click on resources pack, you should be able to see the things that you can download. But you won't be able to do these exercises without the delegate pack. And the delegate pack is important because the answers will not fit onto a PowerPoint screen. So that's the reason why. Okay, we're going to have 10 minutes for that. So this is going to take us through to 10:15. Okay, I'm going to answer some of the questions here. Jared's asked a good question. Okay. The consistency comes from the standardization meeting. Okay, so at the standardization meeting, you would go through quite a few of these to try and gain a consistent standard. There is no formula for levels-based questions, i.e. you need to make this number of applied points, this number of linked strands. So it differs to the international GCSE in business, where they do make a statement about how many link strands are required to be seen to get to top level. 5, if you remember from the training 2 and 3 weeks ago. So they don't do that, okay? And it can sometimes be because there might be some element within the answer that doesn't follow that rigid formula. Some candidate makes some very, very insightful point that if you follow a rigid formula, that insightful point, or which has got a bit of development, is not treated the same as something more basic, which is more developed. So it gives the examiner a degree of flexibility. Okay. Everyone's trying to move away from this scaffolded, rigid structure whereby to answer these questions, you do this, you do this, you do this, and it's some kind of recipe. Okay. And the idea is there should be a multitude of different approaches available. And it shouldn't become this kind of like paint by numbers essay writing, where people are following this kind of recipe of a way to do things. Haneen, yeah, you have to give some balance, some other point of view in the discuss question. Otherwise, you cannot access the evaluation element of the level descriptors. I think you probably answered your own question there, Shipra. Okay, if you've got 2 points, one is level 1, one is level 2, you'd probably say to yourself, well, look, it's going to be on that threshold between level 1 and level 2. And because of the adjacency that is available, if an examiner gave it 3, or if an examiner gave it 2, they would both be accurate marks. And that's just worth pointing out. If I was looking at a review of marking and moderation, a ROM, the new name for an EAR, and I was thinking to myself, right, I can't find anything wrong with the levels, with the points-based marking, but I can find, in my opinion, and that's the critical thing, in my opinion, something wrong with the levels-based marking. I would probably be turning around and saying, well, I'm not going to bother putting in for a review of moderation and marking, because it's going to come down to my opinion against the examiner's opinion. And I wasn't at the standardization meeting. So unless I can find something blatantly disastrous on the levels-based marking, something that I'm sort of giving I don't know, on a 20-mark evaluate question, 12-2, and it's been given 3, I wouldn't be going for a review of moderation and marking because it's going to be a holistic judgment, theirs against mine, and there is also an adjacency. Whereas with the points-based stuff, I can make a clear and surgical laser-guided point to say, why was that not awarded the application mark or the analysis mark? Okay, so 5 more minutes on these two. And I just need to organize myself with my second screen. Okay, we're getting quite a few answers coming in. I'm going to go through these because I think it's actually quite useful just to sort of have a look as to how these are marked. Now, I'm going to change phase now, you see, because before when I was doing points-based marking, I would be underlining things and I'd be saying, well, look, that is an example of AO1, that is an example of AO2, that is an example of AO3. I'm not going to do that now, because everything has changed. It's now levels-based marking. So all I'm going to do is just sort of remind myself that we've got some understanding of limited liability there. Now, I actually think this is quite a tricky question. It's quite a tricky question because the advantages are to Zwift of having limited liability. Very, very easy to turn this into a classic limited liability question that everybody is expecting to see. The advantages to the shareholders of Zwift of having limited liability. Now, that is not the question. And that is where the potential trapdoor comes with this particular question. It's the advantage to the company of having limited liability. Okay? Not the advantages to the shareholders. Now, it may well be that they could use that advantage to the shareholders idea and then turn that around, so therefore it becomes an advantage to Zwift. Because if the shareholders have got limited liability and therefore face fundamentally less risk, they are more happy, they're more happier to purchase shares in Zwift. And therefore, if Zwift issues new shares, it can raise more capital for expansion. And that would be perfectly valid. But when this question was asked, everyone saw that limited liability and went into automatic pilot. Okay. They did not see advantages for Zwift. Now, remember, Zwift is in the question. So Zwift is not applicable in terms of application. The definition could be generic because all the definition is showing is an understanding of limited liability. You know, as long as you're bringing in the application elsewhere, then you're absolutely fine, Shipra. So we've got a bit of John and Eric going on here. So that's why I'm sort of reminding myself here. We've got this sort of 3 million thing going on around here. Okay. And we've got this kind of like scenario here where they are sort of bringing it back round, sort of here, you know, they're sort of turning around and saying, well, look, you know, they can't lose money, these shareholders, but they're bringing it round and saying, well, look, it can give them some ability to raise more share capital. So I'm sort of thinking, well, look, there is some AO3 in there. And then I'm looking down here and I'm saying, well, look, you know, is there some AO4? Now, I always mark AO4 in blue. It's a bit, this is not quite right, but I suppose there's something in it. It's not quite right. Okay, they don't have to publish it online, but they can be searched online. Okay, so, you know, there is some value there and maybe some more sort of analysis here. So I'm sort of making a judgment and I'm saying, well, look, let's just go back to the mark scheme. When I go back to the mark scheme, I'm saying, is it level 1? Absolutely not. It's better than that. Is it level 2? Yeah. I've got more than an attempt at assessment. So I look at level 3. It's not brilliant, It's not the best answer I've ever read in terms of like its number of link strands. I wasn't sure about that. They've got to publish it online. That's not quite right, but I understand the sentiment. So where people went with that was between level 2 and level 3. We ended up with 6 marks. Now, there's a plus or 1 adjacency on the 8-mark question. So if you awarded 7, you're accurate. If you awarded 5, you're accurate. If you awarded 4, you're inaccurate. If you awarded 8, you're inaccurate. And that's the way in which levels-based marking works. Now, that was much the better of the 2 exemplars, okay? Because when you move into the second exemplar, there's all sorts of things here. First thing I'm going to turn around to you and say is I couldn't find anything in there that had any application in this at all. I couldn't find anything. I could see quite a few mentions of the word Zwift, but Zwift is in the question, so therefore that doesn't count. So notice Zwift is italicized, and that's in the question. So just saying the word Zwift, I can't find any application. Now, just because there's no application does not mean that automatically you're in level 1. Okay, it probably does suggest a lower level, but you're also then saying, well, look, there could be evidence of analysis, there could be evidence of knowledge, there could be some evidence of evaluation. And to just say, well, look, there's no application, you're definitely in level 1 seems unfair because you're undercounting the other skills that might be in the answer. So again, this is where holistic judgment comes in. It's opaque, okay? It's why most answers end up in level 2. Most answers end up in level 2 because they're never done everything properly, okay? So they struggle to get to level 3, but they do more than what's in level 1. And it's normally because some skill is missing. And if I was doing a bit of practice, that is what I would be focusing on, removing that missing skill. Okay, so what have we got here? Different identity from the business. Whose is this different identity? Means being a different identity from the business. Well, I'm guessing they're meaning the shareholders. So I'm just reminding myself there. If the business will fail, the owners will lose assets that put them into the business. Owners putting assets into the business, I'm not so sure about that, but it could be cash to buy shares. But I'm doing a lot of work for the student there. So I'm putting AO1 question mark again. If Zwift liquidates the company that will be in debt to investors, the owner's personal assets are safe and can't be forced to use to pay the debts. Not really bringing it round to the benefits of Zwift. It's more about the benefits to the shareholders of Zwift. So they've missed that extra step. Having limited liability, though, can make it harder to get investment. I'm question marking that. Okay. Why? Because owners are not risking as much. Well, if they're not risking as much, that would make it easier for them to get investment. Okay. I was perhaps thinking there that we're going to talk about something else in terms of getting bank loans because of limited liability, making it harder to get bank loans because banks are worried that the company might fail and the bank loan might not be repaid, but we've definitely not got anywhere near that. So it's bits and pieces. I've got something here. If Zwift breaks the law, the company is going to get sued and the owners may feel safer about their position. Maybe. I mean, we went level 1/2, 2/3. And what's interesting there is never ever write nothing for levels-based questions. Never. Yeah, never. Because that answer there demonstrates to you how easy it is to get out of level 1 and put yourself on the threshold of level 2. So long as it's got something that is associated with the question, you're going to pick up something. So to leave it blank is an absolute disaster. Yeah, I can explain the 1/2 and the 2/3 because I have got bits and pieces here of knowledge. Okay, that's what I've got here, and maybe a little bit of analysis. So when I go back to the mark scheme, okay, I'm asking myself, right, there's something in that that's valid for sure. There is definitely not zero understanding of limited liability. So have I got some isolated elements of knowledge and understanding? I haven't got any application. I might have a little bit of analysis. If I give it 3, I'm covered for 2. I would never give that 4, though. In a million years, I would never give that answer that I've just read 4. For me, it's either 2 or it's 3. You might think 2. I might think 3. Okay? It ended up getting 3 and just into level 2. But you might turn around and say, I actually think quite strongly that it's level 1 and I want to give it 2. And that is fine because it is adjacent. Okay? So therefore, as Barbara Sanvido said, you can get into level 1 by doing nothing other than just giving a definition, really. You've really got to work hard not to creep into the bottom of level 2 on the discuss question. You've really got to work hard not to do it. But then you've really got to work hard to get above 6. So on these levels-based questions, you get quite a lot of compression around the mean, okay? It's very, very difficult to demonstrate really high-quality answers that get into that top level because the idea of these levels-based questions is to identify those very best, rather than those students who have been taught an inch of their life on technique, yeah, to try and get into those top levels. Okay, right, I've got to do a little bit of skullduggery and creativity with my screens. I don't know of anybody who takes a Wacom pad on holiday with them, but anyway, that's me. Right, next one, assess question. Now we're getting into some real tricky stuff, okay? The assess question is a question where we're looking for a much higher level of evaluation. The discuss question is evaluation-like, no conclusion required, just some example of counterbalance, some example of a different point of view. The assess question's looking for much more sublime examples of evaluation. It's designed to find out who the best students are. And that is why you see them towards the end of section A in units 3 and 4, and obviously towards the end of section A and B in units 1 and 2. Now, worth pointing out that in unit 1 and 2, the assessed question is worth 10 marks. In units 3 and 4, it's worth 12 marks, but the mark scheme is exactly the same. All that's happened is for the higher levels, there are more marks available. And that, again, should reflect the fact that these questions are designed to find the very best. These questions are here alongside the evaluate questions to work out who should get the A star. That's essentially what is going on here. Okay. Shipra's asked a question about the discuss question. A final judgment? No, it's evaluation light. Just some evidence of some counterbalance, some evidence of a different point of view. No judgment required in the 8-mark question. Okay. Rebecca's asked, can you please explain the AO4 for the first example? Yeah, the first example, the AO4, was in the fact that actually this limited liability could be problematic because the limited liability means that they are a company, and because they are a company, they have to publish their accounts, and those accounts could then be used by competitors. So actually having limited liability could be a drawback. Now, it wasn't articulated as eloquently as what I have just said, but that was the flavor, okay? So therefore, there was some evaluation there. There was some AO4 towards the bottom of the answer, okay? Right, we're going to have a go at the assess question now, and then I'll go back because I'm just conscious of the time, and we've got 2 assess questions to look at and 2 evaluate questions to look at. Okay, there's the mark scheme, okay? The mark scheme, as we go through the levels, we've now got a 4th level, okay? That'll be very, very challenging to get into. Remember now that we're into as soon as you get into these questions, you're into the questions that are designed to isolate the best. Level 4 will not be given lightly. I can tell you that right now. You won't be seeing many level 4 answers. Okay. I'll answer some of those questions that are coming up in the chat in a minute, but I want to get you going because I'm just conscious of the fact that we haven't got an 11 o'clock hard stop, but I would like to finish at 11 o'clock. So in your, in your delegate pack, you have got on page 13, you have got some assess questions. Okay, so 13 is the extract, 14 and 15 is the mark scheme. Then 16 and 17 is the first exemplar. 18 and 19 is the second exemplar. Okay, so I'd like you to have a go at marking those. Okay, and what I would like you to do this time is in the Q&A pod, give me the level. Don't want the mark, just want the level. Give me the level for exemplar 1. So 1 colon L0, if you think it's level 0. 2 colon L0, if you think the second exemplar is level 0. And please do put that in the Q&A pod. Otherwise, it creates a kind of bias if you put it into the chat pod, because then everybody looks at that and thinks, oh, well, maybe they're right and I'm wrong. And it influences people's independent view of the marking. So again, I'm going to give you a bit of time to do this. I'm going to give you 12 minutes. So it's 10:29 BST. That's going to take us through to, here's my maths, 10:41 BST. And then we'll go through them, okay, like we have before. So 2 assess questions to have a look at. To answer some of the questions. Have they confused incorporating with limited liability? Well, the process of incorporation creates that legal separation between the company and its shareholders. So the incorporation is linked to the limited liability. So I would say that that is a valid piece of understanding. The fact that they've now got to, or are legally obliged to, send their accounts to Companies House, which is not quite the same as publishing them online. It's a discuss question, so it's evaluation light. So that is where the evaluation is coming from. So hopefully that's okay with you there, Rebecca Boots. Roubeau. Barbara says 1 is already a gift. Okay. It just shows you how easy it is to get some marks on a levels-based question. Just that's the thing. Okay. And that's why I would never suggest leaving a question blank. Ever, 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 ever. Okay. It's got to be an absolute disaster zone not to get something. There's got to be nothing of relevance in there for it to get nothing. Okay. So I think I've done that, Rebecca. Just going back through this. So is a final judgment required in the discuss question? I think I've answered that. The answer to that is no. It's a valuation light, just a different viewpoint. So having that however paragraph is useful. If you want to try and be a little bit more sophisticated, you could try and start talking about the size or the magnitude of the effects. Yeah. Or in certain circumstances, the magnitude of those effects may be exemplified or they may be mitigated. Nice words. And these are the kind of words that, the best students would use. These are the kind of things that the best students will use. And it's very easy for an examiner to see if a student is doing this through some kind of scaffolding writing template, or if they actually understand what is going on. Because if you see a scaffolding writing template, it's almost never developed. You just get, oh, in the short run, this will happen, and in the long run, this will happen, and there's no real development of it. Okay. It's the 10-mark questions or 12-mark questions, because depending on unit 1 and 2 or 3 and 4, and the 20-mark questions are designed to find these A-star students. That's the aim. Yeah, they had some context though, didn't they, Shipra, in that exemplar 1? They had that context at the beginning. So there were two bits of context at the top, and I suspect that would be the reason as to why that lack of context or application throughout exemplar one on the discuss question probably prevented a higher mark. 5 or 6 or 6. They went 6, you could go 5. Okay. I suspect there was a little bit of generosity on that question. And I suspect the generosity came because the vast majority of students who answered the question probably answered a question about the benefits to shareholders of limited liability, not the benefits to the company, Swift, of limited liability. I don't know. I wasn't at the standardization meeting. I can only speculate, but that's why I suspect that was probably given 6. I would do Thorandi. What? How do I prepare my students for these assess questions? I would be saying, well, look, for me, I'd be looking at, depending on the question, I'm probably looking at a 5-paragraph approach. First point developed with lots of linked strands and application. Some counterbalancing, however, in the second paragraph. Third paragraph, second point, developed with application. Fourth paragraph, a counterbalancing point beginning with however, again developed using application. And then I'm holding something back, something unique to generate an interesting conclusion that is not a paraphrase of what has already been written. That's what I'm looking for. Scott Landry's coming in. I've been noticing Scott Landry in the Q&A pod with some very accurate marking. Yeah, but yeah, Scott Landry's been nailing it pretty much. In the context of that you can never be absolutely 100% right all of the time because of the adjacency, and that is the nature of levels-based marking. But you're in the zone, Scott Landry. When I run a standardization meeting, I use the analogy of herding sheep, and I'm not a shepherd. But the idea is that sheep go off in all different directions, and you're going to try and have to get them into a pen at some point. And all of those sheep going off into all of those different directions are people coming out with lots of weird marks for the same answer. And the idea is through the standardization process, you're trying to get everybody close. Can't get them precisely the same, although that would be the theoretical ideal, but you can get them close. And if you get them close, that is accurate marking using levels-based marking. Okay, so we've got 2 or 3. We've got 3 more minutes on this, 3 or 4 more minutes, I think. Okay, so some nice things sort of coming in here. If you're giving both of those answers the same level, you're saying they're both the same quality. I don't think they are the same quality, and I'll explain that in around about 1 minute's time. Mina's put a really nice point into the chat there about 9 and 10 mark answers. They are very, very rare, and I do not have the ability to search for them. Okay, don't have the ability. I'm not the chief or principal examiner for international A-level business. They can't run the training because that's seen as a conflict of interest. So I'm kind of like second best, but I can only work with what I am passed on. Okay, and this is what I have been passed on. Okay. May well be that through your Pearson representative, you might want to request some examples of 9 and 10 mark answers. That would be your prerogative. We will see a very good example of an answer that is in the top level for the evaluate question in a moment, though. Okay, just very conscious of the time in the sense that we've still got some marking to do on the 20 marker. I've moved across the delegate packlet. What's a packlet? I think I've just developed a new word. I've moved across the delegate pack to my second screen. And again, I'm not really underlining anything here because it's levels-based marking. I'm just sort of like reminding myself of things. Now, this is a bit of an unusual question, bit of a strange question, a bit of an outlier when it comes to an assess question. Yeah, because it's about legislation regarding a charge on disposable cups. It's how it's likely to affect Starbucks. It's a bit of an unusual one in the fact it's not asking you to assess the benefits. Assess how, right? How is this legislation coming in? Okay. Now, can't use the words 25p charge. That is out of the window because that's in the question. Disposable coffee cups is not application because it's in the question. Starbucks is not in the question, is in the question, so I can't use that as well. So I'm sort of making a few sort of points for me. I sort of like, okay, coffee shops. Okay, bearing in mind it's difficult for students to generate the application because the application is pretty much most of what you want to use is in the question. I'll take coffee shops as being something separate. Okay, I can't take coffee. I'm just reminding myself of what's going on here. We've got this thing here with the price elasticity of demand, which is okay. Okay. Cups. Again, that's in the question, isn't it? Own cups. Maybe I can make a case for that. Maybe own cups. Maybe that's slightly different to disposable cups. Yeah, maybe there. I don't know. Plastic cups. It's a bit different to disposable. Okay. And it's got some thing about here about Starbucks selling water, so maybe some AO2 there. What else have we got in this when we're sort of got a little bit of evaluation here? Yeah. Therefore, the change in price won't affect the demand as much. So maybe some sort of AO4 there. I'm just sort of looking at this sort of holistically and trying to sort of think to myself, where can I go? No conclusion, but that's okay. It would be nice to have a conclusion. Whew. Well, and let's go through the levels. Is it more than isolated elements of knowledge and understanding? For sure. Has it got more than elements of knowledge and understanding? It's got more than elements. They've tried to do something with price elasticity of demand. I mean, it wasn't accurately articulated, but they certainly knew what price inelastic was. Okay. Answer kind of drifted away at the end, didn't it? It started moving into this sort of marketing thing. But I guess what they were trying to think about was the effects on Starbucks. Okay. That's what they were trying to do. So we ended up going for level 3 and we ended up going for 6 on this one. Okay. So the overall level was 3 and we went straight down the middle of 6. Okay, next one, I don't think is anywhere near as good. Okay. Now, the reason why I don't think it's anywhere near as good is they don't really do anything in terms of price elasticity of demand. Now, we have this bit here, okay, and I just want to be clear about this as to why I'm not allowing it. Firstly, demand for Starbucks may drop, right? Firstly, so that's valid, isn't it? Demand for Starbucks might drop. If the demand is currently price elastic, then an increase in price will lead to a decrease in demand, as consumers may believe a cheaper alternative may be better. That would happen if it's price elastic or price inelastic. So I'm not viewing that to be that impressive in terms of the use of price elasticity of demand. Okay, we've got quite a bit of application in there. Okay, we've got that £2.50 for coffee. Okay, so I'm just reminding myself of that. £2.50 coffee's in the question, can't use it. 25p's in there. Disposable cups is in there, so I can't use that. We're back to the £2.50. Okay. We've got another little bit there where they're talking about a price which is roughly applicable to Starbucks. We've got these weird sort of things here where, and call it a day. I don't know why that's not turned to red. And call it a day. What does that mean? And call it a day. Give up, perhaps. Again, is it as good as the previous answer? I would say no. I don't think the conclusion does anything at all. It just is just a nothingness. Why bother if you're going to do that? Get rid of that. Okay. Going back to the mark scheme. Looking at that. I'd say 4, maybe 3, level 2. And you can see here, just the way I've done this, it is less precise compared to points-based marking. Points-based marking has got laser levels of precision. It's a keyhole surgery approach to marking, whereas the levels-based stuff is much more holistic, okay? Significantly more holistic. And what you would normally do in a standardization meeting, you'd have a ladder, okay, a ladder. So they'd try and find, if they could, a top level answer. And that might involve scrolling through about 50, okay? And they'd have a ladder of exemplars that you could look at, okay? And the idea is you're saying, well, look, that's a level 4 response, that's a level 3 response, and that's a level 2 response. And then you're saying, well, look, this response that I've now just marked, how does that match up compared to the ones that I've got in my folder, which are my standardization exemplars? Now, we're not doing that. We're not looking at a significant number. We're just looking at 2 blind, okay? But you're trying to create that ladder. That second exemplar was not as good as the first exemplar. Right. I am going to minimize that. And I'm going to have a look now at the evaluate question. 20-mark question. The question I loathe marking because I know it's going to be probably 3 to 4 A4 sides. And the students hate writing because they know it's going to take them a long time. My advice is selectivity. And that is a tricky skill to teach. Backwards engineer the answer. Think about where you're going to end before you select what points you want to put into your answer. It's not about quantity, it's about quality. I am looking for points that I can build link strands from, logical link strands that have got significant amount of detail. I'm also looking at the extracts and I'm thinking, how can I weave some of the extract into those link strands to score the application mark? And the reason why I've picked those points with those link strands is I've already thought about the evaluation. Before I would even put pen to paper on a 20-mark question, I would have thought it through. And if you've saved all of those minutes in your war chest, in your time bank from the points-based questions, you have got that time to think it through, okay? I'm thinking about the end point before I even start. I'm thinking, what clever, sublime conclusion do I want to make where I am not repeating the evaluation that I have already mentioned earlier on within the answer? Because I do not want my conclusion to be a paraphrase of what has already been written. That's what I'm trying to do. Now, We've got two of these to mark, okay? The mark scheme is in the delegate booklet. And again, what you will find is a lot of answers probably in level 2 and level 3. Very few are in level 1, very few are in level 4. The vast majority will be in 2 and 3, okay? There'll be some in level 4. We've got two to have a look at, okay? And I'm going to take this through to 11 o'clock, okay? Because we don't need to look at the support stuff because we did the support stuff in module 1 last week, okay? So I'm not going to even look at the support stuff. I'd rather focus on this. Now, where you are in the delegate pack is page 20 all the way through as far as page 29, okay? Now, I bet people are going to mark the first exemplar wrong, okay? I bet that's going to happen. Let's see what we get. Put into the Q&A pod the level, yeah, because that's the important thing, the level for the first exemplar and the level for the second exemplar. I'm going to give you 10 minutes to do that. That's going to take us to 11 o'clock. And I promise we'll wrap things up quite quickly and we will be done by 11:10. Some of the questions that I can see have come in. Heidi Cole has said, is it useful to use evaluative comments throughout or better to save the evaluation to the end? For me, on that evaluate question, I'd be picking 2 points, okay? 2 points and evaluating at the end of each of the development of each of the points. So I would very much be the advocate of 5 or 6 paragraphs for a 20-mark question. What would my 6-paragraph approach be? The first paragraph would be just a definition of the critical word within the question, just so that the examiner knows that I know what a devaluation or depreciation of the British pound means. And that's what it would be, paragraph 1. There's a definition. Might give an example from the extract because we've given in the extract a table, and the table gives us some idea as to what the scale of the devaluation is. And that's important, the scale of the devaluation. A lot of people will just look at that table and think, right, okay, there's been a devaluation or a depreciation of the pound. Right, I'm going to go into automatic pilot now and just do the classic spiced answer. The best students will say, well, how significant is that depreciation or devaluation? Depreciation is the better word. How significant is that depreciation or weakening of the pound? Is there something I can do with that? Yeah, that's what I would be thinking. Is there something I can do with that? Because a lot of students will just say there's been a depreciation and they will go off into automatic mode and do a well-rehearsed answer that is generic and has got nothing to do with the question. Now, remember, this question, evaluate whether the depreciation of the pound sterling is likely to be the main reason for the increase in the demand for British products between 2016 and 2017. That is a slightly different question to how a lot of students would interpret it. A lot of students would interpret it as there's been a depreciation or weakening of the pound. Let me give what my teacher told me about what happens when there is a depreciation or weakening of the currency. So I'd be looking at this. Paragraph 1, definition. Paragraph 2, first point. Thought about the first point. Thought about where I'm going to go with it. Thought about how many linked strands I can generate. Got to weave some application in. Third paragraph, evaluation of that first point. Fourth paragraph, second point. Already thought about it. How many linked strands can I develop? Got to get some application in there. Fine. Fifth paragraph, evaluation. Okay. Of that second point. Got to develop it. Got to get some application in it. Final paragraph, conclusion. I repeat not, I cannot just do a conclusion that repeats what I've already written in the paragraph 3 and paragraph 5 part of the evaluation. I've got to bring some new material to the table because that final paragraph, after boring the examiner for 3.5, 4 pages, that is the last thing they read before they go to the mark scheme. You go to the mark scheme, and by the time you've gone to the mark scheme, you're looking for something really punchy at the end to really cement the idea that this is sublime evaluation rather than some kind of like forced or taught scaffolded evaluation that's been done in the classroom. Okay. Still looking for some marks to come in. Ooh, I told you that exemplar 1 is full of unpleasantness. I can tell you that right now. And again, we're using the Q&A pod here. We're not using the chat. Okay, a couple of more minutes to do this, and then we'll go through it. Yeah, Scott Landry's, and he's been nailing it really today. He's getting very close. You're within adjacency on this one, Scott. Bit high, but hopefully you'll understand why in a second. Okay, so we're getting some marks coming in. As I say, I think we'll finish around about 11:10 today, so just be aware of that. Lots of questions, and that's great. Lots of questions from lots of delegates. Yeah, I mean, for me, I'd be like, well, okay. I'd be looking at a few. Personally, for me, I'd be looking at some things. I'd be looking. The first thing that attracts my eye, right, is British products in the question. Are all British products the same? That's an open question that you can put something into the chat. Are all British products the same? Feel like I'm teaching an online lesson here now. No one's typing anything anyway. But I'd be looking for the deliberate ambiguities within the question. That's what I would be doing. Increase in demand for British products. British products is ambiguous because there are lots of different types of British products. And I would turn around and say, well, actually, it could be very significant for British products that are non-branded, that are perhaps not focused around quality, that are much more homogenous, that are sold in very competitive world markets. I think it would be the main reason. Whereas perhaps it's not the main reason for strongly branded products. Okay. Because it may well be that those strongly branded products, like Burberry, they may turn around and say, well, look, the pound has weakened. That's going to make our products cheaper in North America in dollars, but we choose to not pass that on because it could cheapen the brand. So I'm looking at that demand for British products and thinking, yeah, ambiguity. Ambiguity that I can seize upon to use perhaps within the conclusion. So I can do my standard kind of evaluation in paragraph 3 and paragraph 5, and then look for something really quite creative that I know nobody else is going to do by looking at British products. They're not all the same. The other ambiguity within the question is the depreciation of the pound sterling. They've not told me to what degree it's depreciated, although if I had a bit of an insight, I do have the table in the extract. And as the second candidate said, it's depreciated by more than 20%. That's a significant depreciation. And that significant depreciation increases the importance of the effect of the depreciation in increasing the demand for British products. And that can be contrasted against like a 1 or 2% depreciation, which will have nowhere near the same magnitude of effect. So sometimes what you could do with these evaluate questions and these assess questions, I would do with my students, I say spot the ambiguity. Spot the thing within the question which is deliberately vague, which you can seize upon to create an importance, or the effect differs depending on the situation, or the effect becomes more or less important. Now, if you do a scaffolded answer would normally be, oh, let's look at the short run, let's look at the long run. Yeah, there's some value in that, depending what they do with it. But maybe there's a better way by looking at that ambiguity. Right. Okay. Yeah, okay. I'd agree with you on that one, Lynn, actually. The second exemplar was indeed in level 4. Okay. I personally wouldn't have given it as high as they gave it. But then I might be looking for something that doesn't exist in the confines of a 2-hour exam and in the confines of examination pressure. Okay. But it did indeed get to level 4. Let's have a look at exemplar 1 first of all. I think this exemplar was a nightmare to mark. This could be a question where an examiner could make an error with it because it's sort of back to front. And I think the back to front problem, and I'm just going to pick a sort of neutral color here. Let's pick some kind of like green. That's quite an exciting color. And it's also the color of the environment and also the color of open for convenience stores late at night. Right, a depreciation of the sterling may be the main reason for an increase in demand, since it's cheaper to convert euro to sterling than before. And I had to sort of sit back and look at this. Cheaper to convert euro to sterling than before. The pound has weakened. The pound was worth, let's say, for argument's sake, €2. Now it's worth €1. Yeah, that's correct. But I think the fact that the student doing it like that has created massive issues for it. Because rather than looking what sterling is worth in euros, they've been looking at what euros are worth in sterling. And this is where it all goes horribly wrong. Yeah. Because we've now got, for the exports of the UK businesses, it may become dearer since they will get less money on their conversions than before. If sterling to euro was an exchange rate of this, so there's a little bit of application there, this is most likely to decrease exports for the UK. Now, they've got it the wrong way around. You know, what they should really be looking at here is that in the price of euros, British goods become cheaper. Notice I'm being very generic there, British goods. I could say, well, yeah, some British goods would become cheaper, especially the ones that have got price elastic demand, because it's likely that, you know, whatever the depreciation is likely to be passed on to the consumer in terms of the euro price. But for products that have got price inelastic demand, it may well be that the British firm takes the view that the depreciation of the currency is going to cheapen the brand, so therefore they will increase the price in euros to offset the depreciation of the pound. That's what the best students would do. That's what the best students would do, okay? Most students would not be able to cope with that kind of argument. So in this first exemplar, we've got lots of things which are wrong. You know, I'm poking around, going all the way through this, looking for bits and pieces that I can find, okay? Found another little bit down here, yeah? Without the UK's businesses having a good brand image, a surge in demand may not have occurred. So there's some kind of like limited kind of statement there. You know, I don't know why you'd pick the BBC. That's a strange one for me to pick, but anyway. I mean, bits and pieces, you know, looking at this, level 1, 4 is where it actually ended up. I could, now there's a plus or minus 3 on this. So you could give it 1 mark and you could give it 7 marks and you'd be accurate. But I think I couldn't get that out of level 1 at all, just because they've got it the wrong way round. And I think the reason why they got it the wrong way round started from this box here. That box there was the critical mistake, where they started looking at euro to sterling rather than sterling to euro. Whereas our second exemplar is very much a different animal. Okay. There's some really nice little bits of evaluation in here. And if you want me to be honest, you've got this, which I think very, very few students would pick up on. This bit here, where we've gone from 140 euro, 1.4 euro, sorry, to a pound, to that 1.14 euros to a pound, which is a fall by nearly 20%. How many students do that? Or do students just say, oh, they're telling me there's a depreciation. By telling me there's a depreciation, right, I'm going to go into automatic pilot and talk about what happens when there's a depreciation. This person's actually thought about the size and the scale of the depreciation. Okay. So that's quite nice. That's quite a nice little bit of evaluative. It's a nice nugget of evaluation. Yeah. We've got some nice sort of development around about here, which is again good. So some nice use of the extracts. Yeah. And then there's this nice little bit here where they're talking about, well, look, it clearly is the most significant thing because of this thing in the extract that says when the pound depreciated by the most, that is where you had the strongest effect on the demand, you know, this correlation. So that's quite nice. And then we started to bring in some evaluation here about there are many other external factors. We've got some other countries might be experiencing national inflation. So there's some nice stuff in here. Okay. I mean, could it be better? I mean, you can always turn around and say, yeah, you could find a better answer than this. But in the confines of a time constraint, you'd struggle to do it. Okay. And then we've got this kind of conclusion here. It's most likely the main reason. So a bit of a repetition there. Got the short run. I think that could have been developed more. But again, in the context of the exam, where you're looking at the quality as a cohort, it actually ended up with 17/18 and level 4. Now, Could you award that 20? Yes, and you would be adjacent. Could you award that 14? And yes, you would be adjacent. And again, it's that ladder issue here. That would have been marked against the overall quality of everybody else's answers. And I suspect on that question, you had a lot of answers that just ignored the question. They just did, this is what happens to the price of exports and the price of imports when the pound weakens. They would not be tackling the issue of, is it the main reason? They would just have gone into automatic mode and said, here is what happens when the pound weakens. This is what happens to exports. This is what happens to imports. That's what they would have done. Okay, so we're going to come out of that. And as I said, I'm not going to have a look at the stuff that we have already looked at in Module 1, because that would be a waste of time. I'd rather spend more time answering questions. So all of this support stuff we did last time. Okay, so I'm not going to have a look at that at all. Seems like just a repetition of what we did. I'm going to go straight to questions. Okay, here is your final opportunity at 11:12 to ask me some questions regarding what we've looked at today. In the chat. Okay, good stuff. Well, in these types of questions, do we advise students to concentrate with 2 points? I'm not sure what that means, but certainly with these type of questions, I think there is a selectivity. That's the important skill, not just to pick anything, to pick something where you've already thought about how you're going to evaluate it. I don't want to get myself into a dead end by picking something that is too simplistic, too obvious. And by being it too simplistic, too obvious, it limits the number of linked strands I can develop. And it also probably limits my evaluative capacity because it's too obvious. I want to have something which I have thought through before so I can demonstrate these higher order skills. That's why, irritatingly, these 20 and 10/12 mark questions, even though none of us like marking them and the students don't like writing them, to get good at them, there is really, really no alternative but to do the practice. And what I do is I do them normally in time conditions. So they have a session, an extra session as we get close to the exam, where we do a 20 marker every single week in time conditions. And then I give them a color-coded model answer. And the idea is to limp them, okay, through to a high level of achievement. Any tips for helping students to stick to one strand and hit the assessment objectives, please? Yeah, color-coded marking. That's what I would do. Color-coded marking is kind of like a visual sort of repeater in a student's mind as to, how to structure and how to develop their response to hit the assessment objectives. Nobody is ever just marking an answer and saying, very good answer, love it, brilliant, 6. They're marking it according to, is it levels based? Is it points based? If it's points based, have they demonstrated the assessment objectives? If it's levels based, then I've got to look at the level descriptors. Why not give some of these exemplars that we've looked at today? Why not give them to students and get them to have a go at marking them? Okay. Or create your own answers and, I don't know, make them generic or make them without evaluation, and then get students to rewrite them, adding in as much application as they can find, or adding in some kind of evaluative property. For Unit 3 and 4, do students have to answer questions in order or start with the 20s? I always get my students to answer in order. There's absolutely no way that I would want my students to miss out on the 4-mark explain questions at the beginning of Section A. If they're going to run out of time, I'd rather they ran out of time on the 20-mark question rather than miss out the opportunity to score relatively easy marks on a 4-mark explain, calculate, or construct question. Absolutely no way. So just to keep things simple, I would just always advocate Section A, Section B, Section C in sequential order, rather than all of this kind of jiggery pokery where we're sort of moving backwards or starting in the middle and all of this kind of stuff. Yeah, a judgment just means like a conclusion. It just means this is the most significant factor because this will be critical because you can't just say this is going to be the most important factor, although there are lots of other factors. That's the nothingness. This is the most significant factor because. However, in certain circumstances, it stops becoming the primary factor and may become a secondary factor. Explain and develop. That would be a good example of an evaluative judgment there. This is the critical factor, the most significant factor, although in certain circumstances, the significance of this factor starts to diminish. Perhaps because the market becomes less competitive. Who knows? It depends on the question. Right, we are at 11:18. The questions are starting to dry up. I'm going to go to the final screen. I'll still answer some questions. Well, Vinaya, it's it's a 2-hour long paper, isn't it? 2-hour long paper, and it's 80 marks. Okay, so you've got 120 minutes to do 80 marks worth of questions. It's a tariff of 1.5 minutes per question. So, but I don't think you take, that long to answer. If you streamline the analyze questions and you streamline the explain questions, you're building up that war chest, that bank of time, which you can use on these trickier questions. You're creating a bit of thinking time, and that bit of thinking time I think is really important. What does the question actually mean? Rather than I've seen depreciation of the pound, I am now going to talk about imports becoming more expensive and exports becoming cheaper. Because I've got to think about that, in answering the question, is imports becoming more expensive helping me? What direction of travel do I need to go? Well, okay, if imports become more expensive in pounds, then that is going to increase the attractiveness of British-made products in pounds. But what can I say here? The question, you could be clever there. You could say, well, look, actually, this is actually not that critical because the question's about the export market. The extracts about the export market. How successful are small to medium-sized businesses in the current export market? So that would be something that you could hold back for the final conclusion. Another factor in increasing demand for British-made products is the fact that imports from abroad become more expensive in pounds. As imports from abroad become more expensive in pounds, that makes British-made goods appear more attractive as substitutes to foreign imports. However, this is unlikely to be the main reason because in the extract, the statement is about the export market as opposed to the UK domestic market. And that shows use of the extract and a degree of cleverness. Okay, right. Discuss, Eastman, is assess light, evaluate light, whereas assess is looking for a much greater level of evaluation. That's the difference between discuss and assess. Assess would normally expect to see some kind of sublime conclusion. Discuss, no conclusion required. It's assess light. That's the way to think about it. Discuss is like baby assess. Okay. Good. Yep, everyone's got to run to class. I've got to run to the swimming pool. Evaluate is super assess. Notice when you look at the questions, Shipra, okay, the questions become more open as the mark tariff increases. Notice how they're quite precise in the assess question that we looked at regarding the 25p charge on disposable coffee cups. And then look at where we go to with the evaluate question. The evaluate question is a much more open question. It's not mentioning something specific about coffee cups. It's mentioning about the depreciation of the British pound. It gives you more latitude to bring in lots of different things. It's a more open question. And that way, when you look at the mark scheme and you're thinking, has the student hit what's in the mark scheme? Never be looking at the indicative content, because the indicative content is as it is. It's just indicative content. There are plenty of other valid answers that aren't in that mark scheme. The thing you should be looking at are the level descriptors. I would try and put, Scott, evaluative comment after I'd develop my first point. I'd put some evaluation. So paragraph 3, evaluation. I want to try and get that flavor. I think if you're bringing 2 points into the answer and then you try and leave all your evaluation to the end, I think that is stylistically and probably written English very, very difficult to do, because you're kind of like referring back to a point that you developed ages ago. And then you're referring back to a point that you developed just a paragraph ago. And then you're trying to put in an overall conclusion as well. I think that's quite a tricky thing to do. Point developed with application. Evaluation of that point developed with application. Second point developed with application. Second point evaluated, developed with application. Finally, we've got our conclusion, new sublime thing, where perhaps I'm picking up on the ambiguity within the question. How big is that depreciation? What kind of British products? It depends on the type of British products and the market they operate in. Depends on the fundamental price elasticity of demand. You know, something like that. But I've got to develop it. I can't just make those statements. I've got to develop it. Okay, good stuff, everybody. Thank you.